let's get our guest in here. Let's talk about this. We have a loaded show today.
Wait, no, hang on.
We're up.
Okay.
We're good.
I'm like, what the heck?
That was behind. Carlos,
okay.
What's going on? How you doing? Carlos Heredia hanging out in Ecuador. We are going to bring in our other guests once they come back on screen. How you doing today, Carlos? You could take your thing off mute. And here we also have Rasmus. Is that all for today? Is Catherine not coming in? It's just going to be the there.
Hi, Pastor. Thank you very much for letting us be with you in your program and allow us to tell the world what is happening in Ecuador regarding the pandemic and the vaccine program that the government of Ecuador has implemented since the producers of the vaccine have thrown out to the market this dead poison. So thank you very much for letting us be here. My salute, my greet to my fellow panelists and to your distinguished audience.
Thank you so much, Carlos. And I apologize it took me so long to get around to you. We're completely loaded here. I've been paying attention to what's going on. Let's bring Rasmus in. Thank you, Carlos, so much. Rasmus, thank you for the show. Thank you for coming over here and telling us everything that's going on in Ecuador today. I think you might be muted.
No. Oh, maybe on his. No.
On his end.
Yeah.
Cannot hear you.
Still none. We'll get there.
Yeah. Go ahead. Catherine.
Yeah, hi. I'm Catherine. I'm doing pretty good. Thanks so much for having us on here. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we're looking forward to letting you know about what's been going on in Ecuador with regard to vaccination drives and COVID policies and all the stuff we've done as activists. And then we have a lawyer here to help with that. And hopefully this will be useful to other people in countries that have similar governments and are facing similar policies.
Thank you. Sure. So I'm going to just start you guys off. I'm going to get right into it. This is my co-host, Steve.
Hey there.
Welcome to the show. Catherine, I'll give you the first Kathleen, I'll give you the first question. Why is it important to understand what's going on in Ecuador?
Well, it's interesting because I spent from the first part of the pandemic all the way until August 13th, 2021. That's when I came to Ecuador. I had lived in Cambodia off and on for 5.5 years, and I never could have believed that country could have been that harsh with their COVID policies. It was unbelievable. I believe they have about a 95% vaccination rate right now. And I don't want to talk all about that country, but when I got to Ecuador, it was different, right? It's a very different environment. But they started to do, or they had been doing similar things. They started to do other things. But the governments are very different. So some countries around the world have dictatorships. Some of them have so-called democracies, and this is a so-called democracy, but there are countries that don't have really strong governments where the people in power actually still listen when you send them letters and when you actually send them a letter that says, hey, this is treasonous, or you send them petitions because they're concerned about staying in power. And I don't know how many countries are like that, but I've been pleasantly surprised by some of the stuff we have been able to do. They keep on coming back harder, but I think all the countries around the world, everybody that's fighting this, needs to pay really close attention to countries that are similar to them. Let's try this, that worked there, let's try that. They're renewing, they have a lot of policies they're thinking about that are very, very regressive. I mean, in some countries of the world, they're actually calming down a bit and reducing some of the COVID policies. But in places like South Africa, particularly, and then here in Australia, they just keep ramping things up. It's interesting.
Yeah. Let's go to Carlos. Do you have a question?
No.
Okay.
I'm taking it in right now. This is good stuff.
Carlos, I mean, how do you think, what's the feeling like out in Ecuador where you're at right now as far as like the people? You know what I'm saying? Obviously, you can have a push with the government. They're trying to do everything. We're going to get into that. But what's the feeling like with the people around the dinner table? What are you guys talking about as far as when it comes to this vaccine? Is there more of a feeling of like, we need to get this done for public safety? Or is there more of a feeling like, okay, what is the West up to again? I don't think we should take this.
Well, we should understand that this is a global plan from the controllers. The plan usually is based in fear. So if you remember, before the pandemic was declared by the WHO, the media starts throwing out to the public, to the people, a bunch of things, making the people to have a lot of fear for that regarding to the COVID-19. So once that's called sort of the window of Overton. I don't know if you know about that. They make the window, they put the fear in the people, and then they come out with a solution. That's what has happened all over the world. Ecuador is not an exception, and it works very strong here. In Ecuador, the president made an emergency decree on March 16, stating that everything has to be closed, and
That's 2020. Yeah.
On March 16 of 2020. Yeah. So they limited our rights. But after that, not just the fear was there. When the vaccines came out to the market, that starts the second step of the plan, that is make the people angry and hatred. We have to understand that the fear and the angry is a subjacent things that are in ourselves. So when the hate came out, it went in against the people that we decide not to participate in the experiment of the vaccines. We all know that those vaccines are in a stage of experimentation, and the producers know very well what the side effects of those vaccines are. So many people decide not to participate of the experiment and did not allow to get vaccinated. That causes a conflict in the society. A lot of hate came out against the people that we decide not to get the vaccine.
Yep.
So right now there is a very strong fight, legal fight, against the program of the government to try to full vaccinate the Ecuadorian people. We have filed many lawsuits against the government, and right now we have a very strong trial in the Constitutional Court because the government states that there is an obligation for the people of Ecuador to get the vaccine. And that is an unconstitutional issue and goes against human rights. So we have filed out a lawsuit against the government stating that that part of the measures they took in order to attack the COVID virus is unconstitutional because no one can go into your body. Each one of us have our own body, and we are sovereign on it. So the government cannot decide what people has to get into the body.
So, Carlos, what you're saying is that pretty much, very much like a lot of other countries, a lot of states, lockdowns came, people got really frustrated, they pushed the vaccines. Your president has pushed a lot of the vaccines, and to this day, he's still trying to make a push for vaccines. Kathleen, I'm going to let you jump in here really quick. They've been doing some crazy stuff over there. You told me this too, and you can expand on this, that they didn't allow, just like in America, Steve, remember when they didn't let people come into the United States if they weren't vaccinated?
Right.
Well, there was a
They're
point.
still not.
I think they're supposed to lift that, right?
I don't know.
I think it was supposed to be lifted. I'm not sure. But I know it affected me. I had friends who wanted to come who couldn't come.
Yeah.
Kathleen told me at one point, and I don't have
going
the
to
exact
build a
date,
Canadian underground railroad
just to get people in. You told me at one point that they weren't allowing people in who weren't vaccinated, but then they had Johnson & Johnson shots at the airport. Can you expand on that and craziness that's been going on in Ecuador like that?
Well, some of these things are from articles. Some of these things are from people that know information from doing research. Some of this information is from people I know that actually may have been at the airport, things like that. But so my understanding is that they had something. I think it was announced on November 30th. Might have been instituted on around November 30th, December 1st. And they just suddenly said, nobody can come into Ecuador without a vaccine, period. And then what happened was that within a couple of months, by February 2nd, I think it was, that came down, and now you can have either a test or a vaccine. But what happened was, I think sometime in mid-December, from my understanding was that they said, don't worry, if you come into Ecuador, and some of the people probably found out at the airport, don't worry if you come into Ecuador and you're not vaccinated. We have a Johnson & Johnson shot. We'll give it to you at the airport, and then you can enter. Kind of like they were being friendly, kind of like they were being nice. Johnson & Johnson, I guess, was worth 2 shots at that time, so that was how they were going to take care of it.
Yeah, and this is before the Johnson & Johnson shot was like routinely pulled all over the world.
Yeah.
I think they'd already had a lot of trouble with it in the U.S. This was in 2021.
We were calling it the clot shot, because we saw the data on it. But this is stuff. I mean, they first started pulling it, I believe, in Europe. I think might have been Italy, but that's irrelevant. But I mean, we did. There was significant data showing that it was a detrimental product, and so it is. I mean, it's amazing that all of these injections are still being allowed, if not, let alone to be under an emergency use authorization or a mandate. There's clear evidence that they don't work, that they're purely an instrument of I don't know, further ailments, which begs the question. Why, like, you spoke to I assume an effective propaganda campaign, a fear campaign, Carlos did. But I mean, how are people in Ecuador 2 years deep reacting to this? Because there's got to be a significant amount of personal experience to where somebody's had an adverse event to where the actual effects of the shots are starting to take shape. What's the overall consensus with the people that you guys are seeing on the ground now, as opposed to the height of the fear and propaganda campaign a year or two ago?
I can answer that because I've been paying really close attention to that. So I circulate a lot of petitions. I send out a lot of flyers. I talk to lots of people. And what happened was, initially there were a lot of people really afraid. A lot of people really misinformed. I did a very small vaccine survey around in my town, and a lot of people got the COVID vaccine because they thought that they'd had COVID. They thought if they got the vaccine, they wouldn't have a recurrence. But then 7% of the people that answered the survey had side effects, and a lot of them knew other people that had side effects. We've heard through the grapevine of lots of people that have died, but one of the main things they actually complained about was diabetes. For some reason, there was a huge bulk of people that took the Chinese shots. Lots of those people got diabetes, and Pfizer was all over the place. So lots of people. And the other really cool thing is, like, some Ecuadorians are highly educated. Many have traveled, to the West, to Europe, to the United States. And there are some news stations that are releasing the truth, or there's at least one. So by now, a lot of people have paid attention to foreign media. We've been putting out a lot of videos, there's a set of interviews with like an Ecuadorian geneticist talking all about the shots. The lawyers are producing a lot of information, public information. And then recently, I heard about a couple months ago, I guess, one of the main newscasts said something about how they had used fetal tissue in the development of vaccines. And this is a Catholic country. So one lady I know was, that's a bit of an activist, was asked by all her friends, what can I do? What can I do? I don't want to ever take another one of these, or I don't want to take one of them. So people are now becoming very much more aware, and now they're faced by, these policies. Like they've got a couple of laws they're trying to pass. One would allow they would extend the emergency for 5 to 10 years, and they would be able to enter homes, like if you sneeze or something, test you, take you out of your home. Another law that they're thinking about would mandate shots for education for all kids. And then you don't have to take any tests or treatments unless there's another law that would say the organic health law. And that, if that were passed, that would say you don't have to take any treatments or medications unless the public or the collective good is affected, right? So we all know what that means. So people, I do think now are getting scared because they're more and more aware. You'll see like 1 out of 20 people on the streets with like, a mask and a visor or 2 masks. But the vast majority of people, now that we don't have a mask mandate, are not wearing masks. They're not, like they realize they've been educated, and they're, and they're a little bit concerned. They're a little bit scared, really, and they don't know what to do. So yeah. I would say that's the overall feeling. But I'm in southern Ecuador. I'm in a part of southern Ecuador, and I know, like, Carlos, you're in Cuenca. You probably travel to other places, so maybe you could answer that a little bit better, too.
Yep.
Carlos, go ahead. If you...
In essence, what was achieved was to build the heart of people fearful and willing to follow any instructions from the controllers. And that was possible and continues to be because of the attitude of the main media stream in Ecuador and the world that are transmitted internally here. If you turn on the TV, you will hear all the day saying them that something weird is happening with the COVID and their variants that are growing and growing and growing. So they keep on putting fear in the mind of the people. And that goes up to including to make anger and resentment, including inside the families and the friendship. Bad sectors of the society have in a big problem because most of the people that, as Catherine said, is waking up and knowing that all the 2 doses they receive of the vaccines are not doing nothing good for them. So now you can walk here in Cuenca at least, and you can see just, let's say, 15 or 20% of the people wearing masks. The other 80% are not wearing masks. But still, when you go inside restaurants or you go into any event with people, you will see a lot of people wearing masks. And most of them are vaccinated. Usually, you can see here that the people that have got the 4 doses of vaccine, I mean the 2 first doses and the boosters, the 2 boosters, are those that most fear have about the viruses. So that is a behavior that controllers have built up into the society in order to control them. So they are doing that because they want ships in the country.
Carlos, I'm wondering really quick, For those of you who have the same mindset, who are grabbing everything you're talking about, understanding this is about control and keeping people fearful and trying to move them into vaccines, for those of you, people like yourself who didn't buy into it, what did you use for treatment for when you did get the COVID out there in Ecuador?
My personal experience, all in my family, we got the Omicron variant 3 or 4 months ago. Well, I never have passed through any test in first place, but one of my children, he went and made him a test, the PCR test, and the result was that he catch Omicron, and all of us in my family, we are 5 in my family, were with the same symptoms. The only thing we did was drink all the day long hot lemonade. That's all what we did. And we ran out of that. Now, the point is that most people think that when they catch a cold, they are with COVID. And the PCR test is already scientific proof that the PCR test, what shows the results of that test is you can get a positive result for any kind of cold you get in your body. So in first place, the PCR tests are not confidential, are not good enough to test what the kind of virus you have there. Anyway, we have treated us only with hot lemonade. That's all what we have done.
Nice. That's the
I've taken a lot of ivermectin, and everybody that I know has taken it as a preventative, and also when they've gotten a cold or something, just in case.
Yeah, I'm just amazed about like how like information just spreads like wildfire. Like we had these same conversations that Carlos was talking about, understanding where it's coming from, and it's just great because there's such a crazy media lock on any of this information going out. They shut it down. They silence you. I do have something over here we can probably transition into. This right here is. Oh, I got the wrong thing. I'm so sorry. Let me get back. Pasta's messing up. The IMF loan. Can you talk a little bit first about the Phoenix plan?
That's still the document.
Do you want to do that, Carlos, or do you want me to?
Go ahead, Catherine. Go ahead.
Okay, so we became aware that basically there were a couple of, for a while there were a couple of newspaper articles, and there was also information posted on the government website that they had received 600. They were going to spend $628 million to basically use the military. It was called the Phoenix Plan. They were going to use 3,000 troops.
Was this? Yeah.
This was July. This was one of the articles was July 29th, 2021. Okay. And then the president introduced it on August 5th, 2021. And they announced the plan to visit 800,000 households. They bought helicopters, planes, boats, etc., to get into the Amazon to go visit the indigenous tribes, to cover all the rural areas. And they had vaccines with them, right? So it still wasn't supposed to be mandatory, but if somebody came and knocked on your door and they were a soldier and they had vaccines with them, what would you do, right? So, well, I don't have to ask you what you'd do, but I can imagine a lot of people got vaccinated. But anyhow, I was wondering, what about this $628 million that they said that they were going to invest in this, right? And so I was all over, the internet doing research on the World Bank site, on the IMF site. I was looking at the International Development Bank last night and trying to get figures and what they were for. And I can tell you that since the pandemic started, they've gotten more than $10 billion in international loans from the IMF. They got $8.5 billion from the IMF, and then more from the World Bank, and then some from the IDB, and then some from other countries. What was interesting was with the Phoenix Plan, the U.S. donated $28 million. So there's your 628. And they did it. I'm trying to figure out exactly when it was. I don't have my notes with me here, but it was something like in July. And then late July, they announced this program. They must have got the 600 million from somewhere else. But now when I say more than 10 billion, I was trying to figure out how much was earmarked for vaccines. And sometimes I could. It'd be like 150 million from the World Bank for COVID relief, including vaccination, this much for this kind of vaccination effort. But generally, they were mixed packages with COVID relief, poverty relief, and sometimes they would mention vaccines. So, but you can imagine that the government of Ecuador, having received more than $10 billion since the start of the pandemic, would want to do every single thing these banks are telling them to do. The IMF has a COVID tracker on their loans where they announce how many policies they're supposed to be following, right? And so I think a lot of what we're seeing now is that they have leftover vaccines. And in spite of what we know, they're trying to get rid of these leftover vaccines. So right now, there's an effort right now. It's they want to vaccinate 10 million people by September 1st, Jeez. Right? And it started in August, this campaign. They're knocking on doors to figure out how many kids you have that are under 5. They're telling the parents, well, your kids have to be vaccinated. We've got, vaccines available for 3 and 4-year-olds now. And they're telling the employers to request that their employees get 4th shots, right? So what's happened is, even though we got now an 85% vaccination rate, they've got to get rid of these vaccines. I think they're terrified that if they don't do that, they're not going to get, how do you pay something like more than $10 billion in loans? And there was even more money than that, but it was earmarked for like green energy or, and some of this stuff, these were mixed packages. They weren't all vaccination. They weren't all COVID, but it was, they're in trouble. They're in big amounts of debt and they've got to get rid of these vaccines. That's my guess.
Yeah. So
besides, do you know what isolated communities are? Well, those are communities that are up down on the east of the Ecuador in the jungle, where you do not have roads, neither the people is in contact with them. The government want to vaccinate them also. That's stupid.
Yeah.
That is terrifying.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Agreed.
And that is the part of the Phoenix plan.
Yes.
They use that justification to get money from the IMF and the World Bank and all those bunch of controllers that are ruling the world. Yeah. So we are aware of all of that, and we are fighting against it. Sure. In nice. All the way the laws allow us to do that.
The government of Ecuador has an amazing constitution, and one of the things it protects is nature, and it also protects genetic resources. So when we pass it out, when we do these lawsuits, we have a leg to stand on. There's many articles of the Constitution that all this stuff is illegal if you look at the Constitution, but the government got really smart. And they've started to, every time they write a bill, they twist some of the wording in the Constitution to make it sound like, to follow the Constitution, they have to provide health care to the collective. So they twist it around to make it look like they're following the Constitution. It's really quite a fight.
Yes, this is so eerie because we had on South African activists and almost the same stories, going through the laws too, looking at everything, finding ways. Just to reiterate real quick, the Phoenix plan started in mid 2021, late July, early August, in the middle of 2021.
1 year ago. Yeah.
Yes, they already had a 52% vaccination rate in Ecuador at the time, but then like you said, $628 million to go in, even to shoot up the people in the Amazon that Carlos talked about. They used the military, the whole 9 yards. Fast forward to today. They're going back at it again. Another IMF loan is secured. We've had it up before. And they still want to continue making sure that they can get not only rid of these jabs, but jab everybody up. They're up in the 80% range right now. So they've increased by using all their power. What could people do today to help out with your fight to get this information out, because it's so eerie that across the board they're doing this. They're trying these in countries in Africa and South America and Central America and Europe. What can we do today, Kathleen, and then go Carlos right after, to help this situation?
Okay, well, you know what's interesting is the last statistics I saw were that the National Assembly has 12% approval rating and the president's hovering at around 25%. He's only been in power since May 24th of 2021 prior to, anyway, let me not go off the subject. But anyhow, they do respond to letters to National Assembly members, because a lot of these National Assembly members we found do not read the bills they're signing. You know, we found one guy who didn't even know that he was absent to sign, to give all the power to sign international treaties over to the president, and to make it so that the National Assembly members, like our Congress, wouldn't have the power to vote on those things. He didn't even know that that's what he wasn't, voting on that day. And that passed, and then we were able to get that taken care of. But what happens is lately, right, some of these legal actions, if we can educate the National Assembly members on what's happening, they get upset. They get enraged. They talk to other members of the National Assembly. They're worried about staying in power. So unlike in some countries, this country still has like a little bit of insecurity on the part, in my opinion, as a foreigner, a little bit more insecurity in terms of whether or not they're going to be able to stay in power. There has been a long history of presidents only staying in power about 1.5 or 2 years here in Ecuador. So they are actually listening, and sometimes they'll backstep for a few months if there's a bill that people get upset about. So contacting the National Assembly members, talking to people who still don't really understand the dangers of vaccines, explaining to them that it's additive. If you get more vaccines, it's worse. That's really important. I mean, just educating and telling the government what's going on. There have been some protests. I think that in this country, it's great how much effect it can have. We've had some successes, and I think I'm shocked. I'm shocked because they were arresting people and putting them in jail for Facebook posts in Cambodia. No joke, like multiple years. It was crazy.
Well, I mean, we've got a guy currently incarcerated on pre-crime for a Facebook post. We've had about 35 to 50 pre-crime arrests in the U.S. since January of 2021. And not for actually doing anything, just talking on the internet. There's a guy in we've seen a number of videos, Australia, the UK, where social media is getting visits from the police on the regular. Germany just passed a very, very, very draconian social media law. We were just talking about before you guys came on about just how spooked up social media is. How there's a revolving door between an academic university, King's College of London, which cranks out a whole bunch of intelligence agency goons in media and in high-level executive positions and in government positions. And but Twitter and Facebook, all of their strategy and media people, all of their security people, all spooks, the Atlantic Council, all that kind of thing. So this is the prevailing information landscape that then becomes part of the narrative in what have historically been incubator nations for CIA nonsense, like Ecuador, like Venezuela, like Honduras, like Guatemala, and like Cambodia. So it surprises me not like very, very little that the exact same crap propaganda tactics you've been assaulted by them, because that's kind of where historically the West has been going to test them out.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering too, there have been a lot of protests in Ecuador, right? I believe it had a lot to do with labor and indigenous people, and there was actually an activist there that's come forth. I think that I can't remember his name, but I saw this in Ecuador.
Yes.
What's his name?
Isa.
How is he there when it comes? Yeah, how is he on this whole situation? Does he have an opinion, or is he just concentrating on labor rights?
Yeah, that was a economical problem and a political problem, basically. But what I would like to say is that the alternative media that inform people about the deep state are at this point of history a fundamental piece for the awakening of the people and make them live in the herd. This is why it's really important that you continue to report what's happening in each country of the world. It's the most directly way to combat these controllers and what they are trying to do with humankind. We should.
Carlos wrote a very amazing letter to President Lasso, telling him that he should veto a law that the National Assembly passed, granting him the international power to approve treaties or any person in public office. I just think that would be a really interesting story to hear, because Lasso later vetoed giving himself all the power to pass international treaties. I can't imagine that happening in the U.S. or in hardly any other country. But there must be some African countries and some other Latin American countries where that might work.
Was he?
Can you talk about that, Carlos? That letter you sent to President Lasso and what happened?
Well, in first place, we have to. The political system here works some sort of way as in the United States. We have a president, we have a national assembly. Then the National Assembly makes the laws, the president approve it or reject it, what the National Assembly does. Okay. In such point, the General Assembly of Ecuador, the National Assembly, work out a law that gives in very easy in the hands of the WHO the control of the health of Ecuador. They made that law and sent it to Lasso to be approved. So we built up a letter that was signed for more than 600 people and sent it to Lasso, asking him to reject that law. What the law says, what the law tried to do, what has happened in last March, when the WHO meeting, all the countries, they request all the countries to approve the amendment to the international health
regulations.
Rule.
Yeah,
you remember?
Yeah, I think it was May 22nd.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So this law allowed the president to go ahead and give WHO all the power to rule the health in Ecuador. So we were against it. You know all what happened on March on the WHO. The African countries, they opposed very straight against the amendments that were proposed by the United States in order to control more the world through the health system. So we built up a letter and sent to Lasso requesting him to reject that law, and he did it because it was against our constitution. It was against human rights. It was against natural law, starting for the sovereignty of each one of us, the sovereignty of the people, the sovereignty of the country. Our constitution states that sovereignty is in the people's hand, not in the government's hand. So we can act against the government if any case they want to give up our sovereignty. And that was going to happen with that law that was built up, was made by the National Assembly. So we have been very active with the friends of Vilcabamba, Kathleen, and Rasmus, and all the people that are very active against these controllers that are trying to rule the world. So right now, with them, we have filed a very important trial against the government to put him in his seat because they're trying to go up over human rights, and we are not going to allow that. And you guys of the alternative media are a very important piece in this game of controlling the world. You are doing the just figure out what would happen if this virus was 20 years ago. Everybody would be vaccinated.
Yeah.
Most of the people would die. But the alternative media are doing a great job in this precise moment of humankind, because it's a window, open window, where people can really understand what is happening in the deep state. And you should reinforce and do all what you are doing in the best way possible to get all the countries to come to your media and tell the world we are awake here and we are against the controllers. Thank you very much for the
thank you
for this occasion. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and I mean that's definitely one of the things that we try to do with these. Pasta mentioned the folks in South Africa. We regularly speak to journalists in Damascus and on the ground in Donbass and anywhere and everywhere we can. So because there really is a reckless control of information that is doing everything it can to limit people's ability to understand how the world works around them. So we thank you guys for being on the ground and actually doing something about it.
Yeah.
And giving us the opportunity to help allow other people to understand what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. Kathleen, get us out of here. The last plan was called the Phoenix Plan. The new bill or whatever it is, does it have a name? Does it have a date? Is it just lingering?
Yeah, well, actually, there's been several, and I know we don't have that kind of time. Let me try to
I just want to know what we have to push back against, you know?
Well, what we have to push back against now is there's one thing that was suggested for the National Assembly to vote on in January and February, and that was the organic law for the management of health emergency due to the pandemic caused by COVID-19 and its variants. And that hasn't been voted on yet, but that would allow them to enter your home and take you away and put you in a quarantine camp, limit mobility, color-coded system, etc. And they use the Constitution to say that, you know, they're doing the right thing by the Constitution. And then there's another law, and that is the organic health code law? Is that what it's called? I think it's called the Organic Health Code. It's very, very, very long. It does a lot of really good things in healthcare that I don't think Ecuador can actually afford to do. You know, like cancer treatment immediately without having to wait at high quality clinics. All has a lot of different areas of concern, and some of them are pretty. You know, a lot of the Catholics around here don't like some of the things in that bill, but there's definitely a provision for you can't go to school if you're a kid unless you're vaccinated. And there's a thing for, you know, if we decide it's important for the collective good, you have to take treatments or medication that we decide. So, and then just educating, because I talk to people that are just not clear about what's going on. And, you know, what you would do if a soldier came to your home with vaccines, right? If you're uneducated, if you don't know what's going on, is very different than what you would do if you are.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Thank you so much for coming on, Kathleen, Carlos. It was amazing. Steve, you got anything else?
Oh, no, appreciate the time you guys had with us. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be following up with you guys.
Yeah, this will not be our last conversation. We will be back, and we will keep an eye. Thank you so much. You guys have a great, great day, and good luck in your fight.
Okay.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.